Good morning, everyone, and welcome to week 8 of menu and facility design. You would have saw a brief message that I already posted up on the announcements, and I just wanted to thank you for being so great with me when we had some tech issues, and as well as all of the well wishes. I'm feeling so much better, so that's much appreciated. So for today, let's start. So for this week, we are going to be covering some of the design psychology in regards to our senses. So, sight, sounds, taste, hearing, all of those. Last week, we covered some of the design trends. We looked at some of the front of house areas that exist. There was 14 steps for planning an effective design that I wanted you to go over, and as well as what is turnover rate as far as flipping tables inside a restaurant and how important it is. Then you also got a little bit of use with using the Visio design software, or I hope you did anyways, and that leads us to today. So just right here, these are just a couple images of things that people have created where they built the last assignment were 7.5% of a bedroom with a closet as well as an ensuite. And these are some of the ones that I pulled out that I thought were quite nice. Not all of these are perfect, but these are decent. Little things such as this. So what you see here, this is that pocket bifold door, but these doors right here would not be able to actually open because it would hit this wall. Like little things like that. I probably wouldn't have reduced any marks, but it's just good to know. Same thing with this, like although it's really nice, it would probably be a little bit too crammed. And that's often what the issue is with these kind of assignments is that you think you have a ton of space, but even between this chaise couch lounge and this unit, that's probably only maybe 1.5 feet. So you just got to be a little bit more careful as far as when you do design, make sure you give up more room than what you might think. So for today, a few things that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about servicescapes and what exactly are those, and how our senses guide us with design. We'll talk about colors and the impact of colors on our brand as well as the restaurant. Lighting, which is probably the most important aspect because the different types of lighting will really determine what kind of concept you have. The flow of materials and personnel, and then also a little bit of human workspaces. We had a Kahoot, but we're not live, and that's kind of unfortunate, but maybe we'll do that during our class this week. Okay, so the very first one I want to talk about is servicescapes. So servicescapes is the impact of the physical surrounding on the customers and employees. And essentially is what it is how you psychologically react to the physical. And we're going to go through this. So I put a couple pictures here that are showing a different servicescape and looking at this, but also imagining different smells and different heat levels and music perhaps, then you can get an idea of how this might psychologically affect your senses. And the first one we'll talk about is your own personal space. So Edward Hall, he was a person that came up with the idea of the perception of space and how we feel. This very much is different amongst different cultures. So usually you'll see maybe in China and India where they're in more of the urban settings where there's a lot more people, they're more used to having a crammed in environment versus rural India, China, Canada, places outside the city, we feel more comfortable with more space. So, take it with a grain of salt. It all depends where you're from. But generally, public space, which is 12 foot or more, there's no ownership of space. So it's an open space that everyone feels that they're their own person in there, but no one owns that space. Social space is usually about 4 feet to 12 feet. So within a 12-foot range, that basically feels like that would be your own social group. Personal space is 18 inches to 4 feet. So this is direct ownership. So this could be what your table is. So if you're sitting at a table, that 4 feet in and around you, that's your personal space. And unless they're friends or family, no one should really be in that. I guess now that is 6 feet based on COVID. 6 feet is now your personal space bubble. And then, of course, there's intimate space, which is right beside you or even like within 18 inches. So this is your personal space, and you're generally uncomfortable unless you have invited that person into your space or it's your wife, boyfriend, whatever. So I like to think about intimate space when you consider washroom design and even personal space. So anything within, toilets too close to each other, sinks too close to each other, we try to keep that at least that 4-foot distance between those two spots. Next one we talk about is the visual space. So the way that we view things. So in particular, at a restaurant, we like to think about sight lines. I don't want to see necessarily into the dish pit. I don't want to see into the washrooms from where I'm sitting. I don't want to see the front door from where I'm sitting. When I'm in the restaurant, I kind of only want to see other people enjoying themselves, maybe the bar, TVs, plants, design things. So we got to make sure we keep that in mind. A couple other things is that if you have a small space, you can use mirrors to open up an area. You want to make sure that everyone seated at a table can see what they need to see and not what they don't want to see. So if there's bathrooms or signage leading you there, I want to have an idea where the bathroom is, how to enter and exit the building. If there's a checkout or like a service station that I can walk up to, I don't want to see any dump stations, so servers grabbing plates and all kinds of stuff and just putting in like a dump area. Nothing unsanitary, and no dust, dirt, or grime, basically. So this right here is just a basic layout of a restaurant. It has your bar with this service area right here. It's got a little small kitchen. Now, this isn't a real restaurant. It wouldn't work very well. It's a little bit not detailed enough, but it gives you an idea of sight lines. So typically in class, I would have people start analyzing this little map and say, what are bad sight lines? I'll just tell you now. So if I were sitting right here as an example, my sight line would actually go and kind of see people entering and exit the washrooms. And then same thing with this one here, maybe for the ladies, that's not fantastic. If I was sitting at any of these ones right here, I could see, the door, of course, everyone can see the door in this particular map, but I might be even able to see into the service area or even in through the kitchen a little bit. And especially here at the bar where you can see here, you can see right into the kitchen. So there are some seats that aren't fantastic. There are always going to be ones that have, a worse view and some that have a better view. And our idea is basically that we don't want any particular seats with a bad view. This one right here, because it doesn't have a vestibule, which we talked about last week, there might be a lot of drafts and hot or cold air depending on the weather coming in. So the people in and around these tables with their back facing to it would probably feel that a little bit. So it just gives you an idea. Next is auditory space. So auditory space is what you can hear inside a restaurant. I think we've all been to a restaurant before where it was incredibly either too loud or strangely quiet. And we want to be somewhere in between. So primary audio is up to 20 feet. Over 20 feet, now you're yelling at someone. Background audio, it sounds like it's at least 20 feet away to 100 feet away. And this can all be manipulated by design as well. Even you guys living in maybe some of your student housing or apartments or whatever it might be can hear your neighbors, your roommates, and all of that can be distracting at times. So things like fabric and carpet on walls, floors, and ceilings have a noise canceling effect. Even this ceiling here, so you see they put all these little panels in, that's noise canceling to stop the echo, because in those big rooms sometimes you'll have echoes and noise will travel very far. And this is just these cloth, they're probably just like wood covered in cloth and they're just screwed up into the ceiling, but even that will stop it. I'm in my basement right now, basement office talking to you, and I can tell there's a little bit of an echo as well, so you might even hear that a little. And then also we want background music to drown out other conversations, the clanking of dishes. Cooks love to sing and yell and have a good time online. So we don't want to hear that every time the door to the kitchen opens. So that background music set at the right level is perfect. And usually that as you get busier, you might actually increase that background audio. You'll turn it up as you get busier into your evening. And the next one is olfactory space. So olfactory space is essentially your sense of smell. So smells and aromas can be manipulated using aroma infusers and ventilation. A lot of people use certain scents to get different reactions. Vanilla, cinnamon, sugar, apple pie. These are all like these scents that a lot of us feel are very homey and cozy. People use it in even real estate when they have open houses and they ensure that those smells are around as well. Casinos actually have scent emitting slot machines to entice gamblers to stay longer or to feel more comfortable. A lot of times when you walk into a kitchen, you'll smell some of the sauces or the garlic or whatever that might be cooking. Sometimes it's fantastic. Sometimes it actually can be upsetting to people. So things like roasting garlic are usually done in the morning before they open so they can get that smell as it's pretty intense, kind of let it dilute a little bit. Same thing with onions and things that have a really quite a bad smell. Now, I think I need to hold on here. I'm not sure if you can see exactly here on the bottom, but what this is, what we're looking at here is negative pressure versus positive pressure. Now, the reason I'm talking about this is that you actually pay a lot of money in restaurants for different amounts of air pressure in spaces. As an example, now during COVID, if you have a disease, they would like to put you in a room that has negative air pressure. So if you are in an infectious person and you have it, they'll put you in a clean room, which is negative room pressure, which means all of the pressure outside the room, let's say in the hallway, will actually enter into the room versus it will try to exit. So if there's disease in this room, we don't want it leaving. Same thing with a kitchen. So a kitchen has lots of smells and lots of heat. We don't want the smells and the heat necessarily to go out into the dining rooms and the bars and everywhere else. So kitchens like to have negative air pressure. Otherwise, you have positive air pressure. So as an example, a dining room. So in this room, everything is fine. We want the cooled air from the dining room to go into the kitchen, not the kitchen air go into the dining room. Also, when you think about outside, if you have positive air pressure in your dining room, when you open the door outside, some of the air from inside the room goes outside versus the cold air from outside comes in. I know it's kind of confusing, but air pressure is basically just the amount that we pump in or that we take out, and it's actually quite an easy thing to design. And the last sense that we're going to talk about is tactile or kinesthetic. So essentially it's what we touch. So when we touch something, so here's just a little piece of wood coaster, it has a feeling to it. So when you think about wood, there's a warmth to it. It's more natural versus something steel. I don't have anything steel, but I have this rock here versus this rock which is cold and dead, and this would be alive and warm. So everything has a different sense and a different feel. And if you go to a restaurant and they have really kind of crappy cutlery and it's very easily bent, versus you go to that same restaurant the next week and they have nice, thick, heavy cutlery, now all of a sudden the way that you feel about that restaurant, your sense of its class has gone up just because of what you're touching. So stainless steel tables versus wood tables, how do they make you feel? Low ceilings or narrow rooms versus high ceilings, weighted silverware versus light, thinner options. Even how heavy a door is when you open it. So you see a lot of these nice places that have these huge monster doors that take a little bit of effort to open up, gives you a sense of quality. Thermal space, it's basically just how we keep our rooms if they're hot versus if they're cold. Hot rooms can feel more crowded, wait times seem longer, people can get irritated. So this is something to keep in mind. When you are out on a patio and you're not offering any shade, this can be also an issue. So you want to make sure you're offering pergolas, umbrellas, misters, anything like that. And then cold rooms are most uncomfortable. So this affects the younger and older generations obviously the most. They do not entice diners to stay longer. And this could be from drafts, from the doors opening, or the placement of tables underneath air ducts. And this is all design stuff. This is the stuff that you want to fix. And now that I know this stuff, when I go to restaurants, I actually feel it or I see it, or I see a cold air vent right over top of the table. And I say, everyone that sits there probably complains about being cold. So you got to think about the placement of those things. Now, we don't go into the actual design portion of those, but it is important to understand. And the next one I want to talk about is how color affects mood. So we use, in design, they use a lot of different colors. And if you ever watch like an HGTV or design show, you'll see how they use pops of color to change the mood of a home or a room. And it's no different than what we're doing. So colors can emphasize different feelings, thoughts, or behaviors. Light and cool colors are often used in small and narrow spaces. So if you take the same size room and you paint it white versus you paint it black or a dark brown or something like that, the dark and warm colors will advance, which means that they will actually close in the space versus the light colors will recede the space, so it'll make it seem larger. Also, white is used for cleanlier spaces or those lighter colors. So often it's used, in hospitals, in washrooms, in kitchens, because we want to be sanitary. Bold colors encourage turnover. So the brighter and louder a place is, the faster people will actually leave, and more subtle colors will create calm. This right here is just the colors of interior design, and it looks at a few of them and tells you how it makes people feel, and some of the places that they will actually use it. So you'll see a lot of those calm yellow colors in hospitals and places like that. As part of your project, we're going to be talking about making up your own brand. And we've already talked about this a little bit. So any imagery or logos, which will represent your concept, that was the first assignment that we ever did. Or maybe the second one that we've ever done. Types of font that you will use. So basically you're going to use 3 different types of font. One as your titles of your menu, one as your menu items, and one as your descriptors. And then we also want to talk about a primary and secondary brand colors. And usually on most menus and also in design, because they kind of match each other, you probably use no more than 3, maybe 4 color schemes. Okay, so if you include this in your major project as part of your concept statement, it's a great branding package. They'll get you some of those bonus marks, and we'll actually talk about that on week 11, I believe. As an example, this is Georgian College's branding package. You can see all the colors that they use. They're basically white, the Georgian blue, the green accelerator, black, of course, and these are their primary colors. They've also have a couple tertiary colors or logos. So something like this picture here, which is just kind of like a USB stick, photography. This tertiary color is what we call like a third tier color of this orange. And this will kind of break it all down. So you have your primary palette, your secondary palette, your tertiary, and then the different fonts that they use. Now, what's cool thing about this is you've seen commercials, you've seen social media posts, you walked around the school. These are all constant. There's never going to be a piece, a memo, an email, anything coming from Georgian College that doesn't use exactly these fonts and these colors. So consistency is key when it comes to concept building and brand building. And in this project, I would assume that you would want to do the same. Okay. Now, I'm going to keep going, but at any time, feel free to pause this video, take a break, grab a coffee, go to the washroom. I'm more than halfway through, so about another 10 minutes or so. Next thing I talk about is lighting. So lighting is, as they say, it's the most important aspect of design because lighting will definitely show you the feel of a space. So the amount of lighting must be adequate for workspaces, but efficient and suitable for guest areas. So when we talk about lighting, professionals use the term foot candles, and a foot candle is the amount of light inside a 1 square foot sphere, assuming there's a single light in its middle. So as an example, the sun, direct sun staring into it is 10,000 foot candles. This will blind you. An overcast day, which it is most definitely today, is around 100 feet candles or foot candles. Natural light should be used as much as possible. It'll save you a lot of money. And then we also look at the intensity of different lights that are available. Now, this is a little guideline for what kind of lighting we'd like to see. In a fine dining restaurant, we usually don't use more than 15 to 20 foot candles, which is very dim, but it's intimate, it's cozy, and it encourages people to stick around. Walkways and storerooms, you might have 20 The kitchens and the kitchens might be 30 to 40. A more of a fast service area is 40 to 50 because their idea is that the brighter it is, the faster people will come in and leave. So if they have nice bright lighting, people won't stick around because they make their money, fast service on, and cafeterias, on pushing the most people they can through during those given lunch, dinner, breakfast times. And then 70 up to 150 foot candles is for reading receipts, basically book work. So you want it really bright. Now, a couple of things you want to keep in mind are some of our materials. So something like wood absorbs it versus stainless steel tables, glass, mirrors usually reflect light. So you might have what you would think is a pretty dim light package in your room, but because you have all these mirrors and glass and stainless steel, it'll become really quite bright. Also want to watch angles for shadows and blocking light from someone else's workspace. And I think I have a couple options here to look at. So this one here, as you can see, they have a lot of these lights in the walls. They're not shining directly on anyone, rather they're shining up into the wall into different spaces, and then just a little bit of candles. But this room is quite bright and lively and also like a homey feel. This one here is very intimate. So they do have lots of lighting around, but on the tables themselves, it's quite dim and dark. And these very comfortable seatings will encourage your guests to stick around for a long time. This is my favorite one here. So this is actually in a restaurant in Toronto, and what they did not have was a patio. So what they did was they built an indoor patio that looks like the outdoors. So this is all fake greenery up on the wall. They hung out those patio lanterns and made it a very dark space, threw in some of these trees, a lot of the wood features to make it look like an outdoor patio. And then there you go. It seems like you're sitting outside, but you're inside, and it's open year round. This one here is where they've actually used these ceiling tiles to block some of the light because of all of this stainless steel and metal and mirrors in there. So it is already very bright, but it would be even much more so if they hadn't done this. But it does give a good imagery of how the light can reflect off different surfaces. And the next thing we'll cover is the flow of human workspaces. So the flow of materials and personnel, how to sanitize and supervise effectively, and then some storage and refrigeration and other areas like that. So one thing we talk about in restaurants is the flow of stuff and people. So the first one is movement of employees from one functional area of the kitchen to another. So when you're in the kitchen, and if you've seen it, it's almost like a dance. The kitchen workers are working around each other using very sharp equipment, hot equipment, stoves, open fire, grease, and ensuring that that small space is designed properly is very, very important. We also talk about the flow of raw food from the dock, or what we call the receiving area, to storage, to preparation, and then finally to service. So when we talk about safety in design, we have to think about, okay, if I have raw chicken, which can be very dangerous to people, how long does it take me to get it from receiving to where to the people? How many different areas does it touch? How many people have to touch it? And as well as how many different contact points are there? And it's something that, even more now than ever, we have to really look at and think about. And then also the flow of dishes through the dishwashing system and back to the service area. So once the food is plated on there, then it'll move out to the dining room, guests will eat it, and then it has to come back, as well as all the waste needs to be thrown out. Now this right here is just one of these troublesome traffic plans. I think it's cut off a little bit, apologies. And they're just showing you a regular house, and when people come in their house, all of the different areas of congestion. So you see a big one right here, you see a big one right there, and then all through the kitchen. Now we want to do like a similar thing with a restaurant. This right here is the flow of materials and personnel, and it gives you an idea when things come in the back door, where they have to go through and where they all end up coming back. So it is kind of cyclical, it's a big loop. When you think about your design it like this. Start from the back door, then by the back door, where's your receiving area? So where do you look and you accept all your goods? Then you look at your dry storage and your cold storage. So let's say I got meat, cheese, and bread. So maybe my bread goes in dry storage and my meats and cheeses go into the cold storage. Then there's a preparation area, which is usually, or a pre-preparation area, which is where maybe the bread is sliced, the chicken is portioned and cut or battered, and what else is there? Meat, cheese, and the cheese is maybe cut or packaged or whatever it might be. This is not the final service. This is the preparation for when somebody does order. As soon as someone orders a dish, then that's when you do the final preparation. Heat is added if it is a hot dish for the last time. Goes out to service. Then goes out to the actual dining room itself. After the meal is done, it goes back to warewashing. They wash the dishes, and the dishes will probably come back here. But then all the waste goes back out the back door. So that gives you an idea of either of the food and also how the kitchen staff work and also the front of house staff work. Now this here, again, was that map that we already looked at, and we look at the different walking routes of people. So when you think about customers and guests, and this is in blue, and I'm sorry for the kind of Mickey Mouse attempt here, you see they come in, they talk to the host, they move all around, they go up to the bar, they go to the washrooms, they go over to dining areas, and that's about it, right? And then you see the service staff where they come out of the kitchen, they go to their own service area, they go to this area over here, which is the service station for all your drinks, and then they will walk around as well up and through all these. So in my mind, I would like to say, okay, where is the areas that people are going to run into each other? And this whole wraparound here to this service area is going to be difficult for servers. You're going to have to run into people a lot. People are going to be pushing out their stools, and they might be coming with drinks. And this might be an issue in this area here, as well as up and down these stairs. Other than that, it's not horrible. Now, what I'm showing you here is just a more realistic looking restaurant with the size of it. And you would want to do something that we like we just did, kind of measure out or map out where the employees would walk, but also where the customers would walk, and also where the kitchen staff would walk. And you really get an idea of where your trouble areas are. And in this particular one, I can see all kinds of corners where they go around and you might not know somebody is there. There would be a lot of different issues. Which reminds me of one of the best flow experts out there, which is IKEA. So IKEA has basically decided, hey, I'm not going to allow like a Walmart setup in kind of a grid form. Here you go, have fun. There's labeling on all the aisles, and it's about efficiency. Get the customer to the product that they want to buy. And in the very front of usually T section of those Walmart's, Canadian Tires, Best Buys, you name it, Costco's, are all your best-selling items that you have to walk by to get to the bread, to get to the meat, or the seafood area. IKEA's done something quite different where they basically said, I have created a maze. And if you want to go look at shelving or throw pillows or whatever it might be, I'm going to make you walk through the living rooms, the workspaces, the kitchens, the dinings, the bedrooms, bedroom storage, finally until you get to where you want to be. Which is great marketing, and it's fantastic, except for you can't go to IKEA for 20 minutes. It's not an in and out. It's I'm here, and that's why they also have a fantastic cafeteria and serve wine and beer and everything else, because it's a destination now. It's not a chore. A couple things that we need to understand for ease of sanitation. So last week I talked about sanitation and it's how hard it is to get everyone to ensure they stay clean. COVID-19 has obviously opened our eyes to the importance of this, and everyone is being a little bit more careful. But as far as design is concerned, ensuring that things are easily cleaned will ensure that they stay cleaned. So the finishes that you choose, having carpets in restaurants are usually a horrible idea. So you want something on the walls, on the floors and ceilings that are easily cleaned and sanitized. You want to arrange work areas so there's not a lot of cross-contamination between raw and cooked products. That's why you'll see prep areas in the back by the fridges, behind the hot line or the cold line or the service stations. They try to keep those separate. Using as much wall-hung equipment and locating utility services on the walls keep the floors clean, and things that you do have on the floors often have wheels on it is very useful as well. When it comes to supervision, there's a couple things. So as you are all in hotel resort, the idea is that because you're taking this as a management diploma, you will be in management. So maybe not your first job out of school, but probably your second, third, and moving forward, you are now a supervisor, manager, or something higher than that. Hopefully owner. Supervision is a very difficult job, making sure that people are doing their job even when you're not there. It's tough. So when it comes to design, we can help ourselves. So locating the production office within line sights of the prep areas is very useful. Minimizing the number of walls and partitions between functional areas. This is especially useful in the dining room where you might not know that a table is sat in a particular table if it's kind of sectioned off or behind a lot of things that you can't see. Where interior walls are necessary, as between two banks of equipment, you can use a half wall and just really try to separating things by floors. Downtown Toronto, you might not have that option because you don't have the space, but separating areas by floors really cause an issue. This is an office for managerial personnel. So this is a small office, about 64 square feet. It's functional. It's all you really need. There's areas for 2 people. I always think an office should have room for 3 people in case you need to have hard conversations. It's always very useful to have that extra person in there to ensure that nothing bad is happening, right? So have some witnesses if you have to discipline or hire or fire somebody. Space efficiency. Essentially, that is what this course is all about. Like, how do we use our spaces just right? Not too large, not too small. We all pay a fee for square footage. The majority of us anyways do. It's mostly rentals and leases when we open up restaurants. And we got to be correct about it. We don't want it jammed. Employees don't like working in spaces that are jammed, and it's also just not safe. So when you think about this, we want to make sure that we have enough room per person to work efficiently, not waste a lot of money, but also maintain happiness and not cause crowding, injury, or cross-contamination. Up until this last couple years, you'll see here 2005, 10, 13, 18, we've lowered the amount of square feet per employee. And I'm assuming now in the last year and going forward, we're going to start opening those up a little bit. When you create a human-engineered efficient workspace, so think about behind the hotline in a kitchen, in a dishwashing area, behind the bar as a bartender. These are areas that are fairly tight, and they're supposed to be because they're efficient. We don't want them, we kind of count steps when we think about this. So if you have to make a particular drink, how many steps does it take you to walk, let's say it's a Caesar, to get the glass, to get the rimmer, to get the Clamato and vodka and all the ingredients, how much time does it take? So these efficient workspaces are often smaller, but they have everything around you. And things that we do need to be careful about is how many people work in there, what styles of equipment that we have, what are the clearance for any of the equipment doors? So if you're opening a hot stove, does that mean no one can walk by while that stove door is open, or is there room around it? The type of food or drink being processed and what storage needs are there. I won't go through this, but this will just tell you a little bit of information as far as how much room in between tables that we need. So what's an adequate aisle space? Now, first of all, I'll say there must be at least one aisle space that's always a minimum of 43 inches. That is the space of a wheelchair. So AODA, which is the Ontario Disability Act, the Accessibility Act, basically it states that 43 inches is the minimum. So you have to have a door from the entrance that's 43. Aisles, washrooms, everything must be at least 43. And then you'll also probably choose a couple smaller aisles in between tables, but then more of a main traffic corridor as well. So again, when you think about retail, think about a Walmart in the center. They're nice and big and open, and there's probably 15 feet between the aisles. And then there's all these smaller aisles coming off it. So think about that when you're doing your design, and this will help you as far as what kind of spacing you would require. As well as work surface height. So we are all not the same height. I am 6 foot, and then I know there's many in my class who are around 5 foot. So we work better at different heights. And I'm sure we've all done this where we're working at something that's far too, low for us, where we're working and our back starts to hurt, or you're working up higher and your neck starts to hurt, or your arms or shoulders. So this gives you an idea of what kind of work that you are doing, whether it be precision, light work, or heavier work. Basically, the more detailed and finicky the work gets, the higher your particular workstation should be. Now you can change the height by putting things on the ground. There are some tables that will lift up and rise up, but generally, just choose the middle one and the light work option, and that'll help for, depending if you're taller or shorter, will be good enough. Storage. So we all have a dry storage is what we're looking at here. So this is a dry storage area for most of your restaurants. It also carries more than just food, but also paper, cleaning supplies, things of that nature. We also look at refrigerated storage and cleaning equipment storage. So some of the dry storage spaces, these look exactly like a fridge would look. So these can be fridges or dry storage, and these are the most efficient spaces. So this is 96 square feet. It's for a very small restaurant. So about 10 feet by 10 feet almost. And it gives you aisles or storage shelves all along, and you walk in the middle. And this middle area will also be enough for rolling carts to roll in and store there as well. These here are two identical in size, but different setups. So this one here only has 3-foot clearance. This one has 4-foot clearance, but this one here has an extra shelf of storage versus this one does not. When you think about this, just think about, do I have these big rolling racks that need to come in, or kegs, or big heavier things? And if not, I can go for the more storage. So refrigeration, it's one of the most important aspects, one of the most expensive aspects of restaurants. And we generally try to place them close to the delivery areas, so the receiving areas, unless you are a bar fridge, and then it's obviously behind the bar. So it is recommended to have 3 separate fridge spaces, although most restaurants don't because they're not big enough. But if you have a very large place, you can have 3, and you want to carry one for each fresh produce, one for dairy and eggs, and another for meat and poultry. Reason is that all of these like a different temperature. While fresh produce likes not as cold, dairy and eggs is somewhere in the middle, and meat and poultry you want to keep quite chilled, almost not quite freezing. So if you have the ability to, then do so. Otherwise, you can actually just change where you put them on the shelves, because the bottom shelves are the coldest versus the top shelves are the warmest, because hot or heat rises. So when deciding how big the refrigerated space you want, keep in mind the size of your establishment. How do you serve your food? Do you have frozen food? Is it deep fried, or is it kept just refrigerated? How many deliveries, and the way that we accept our food? These are a couple different options for you. There's cooler freezer combos. There's one that you have to walk through the cooler to get to the freezer. You can build them however you want. And this is really up to your own imagination. This is kind of like a walk-in with a reach-in area, so that's useful for maybe behind a bar, but you can also walk in and put your kegs and tap those. They're all useful. The angle ones with the walk-in ability are great for more of a retail area, but gives you an idea of how you would build those. And then the last one is the employee locker room and toilet. So this is also, we want to think about restrooms for employees, but also just an area for the employees to relax before their shift, after their shift, during their breaks. This is actually really important. Many people do not give you enough room while you're at work, specifically in a place that is cold 6 months of the year. It's not like you can just go for a walk during a break. So having this space will actually just help you retain employees, and you'll have a better, more functional staff. So keep that in mind. This is a very easy men and women's washroom. They're both 13 feet each by about 10 feet, and it has your sink, your toilet, and then, or your urinal, and then a separate toilet, as well as the women's has 2 different toilets. Both of these are obviously for disability access. A couple things like server stands. These are things that are important. Now they can be kind of put in towards the end of your design. They're not huge as far as space, and you want to put these kind of strategically around your restaurant to ensure you're not walking too far to get to a place to grab cutlery, new glasses, the billfolds, whatever it might be. They usually go in after the main components of your design, and they vary based on what you need. And then same thing with back bars and service stations on bars, which is actually what part of our assignment will be today. So this right here is some of the back bar areas. As you can see, it's just all about storage. So hard alcohol, easy access alcohol that you use often. Then this is your refrigerator, and then it looks like a tap, your POS, glassware. And this is another option of this right here, taking a look at it. All the things, and this is what would be considered your bottom bar with the actual guest service bar on top. And this here is a really great service station, typically meant for servers to come pick up their drinks to run their tables, but you would also use it for any of your bar customers as well. So again, it's a lot about visuals, a lot about taking a look at what's offered and what you can do in your spaces. That's it for this particular lesson. There's a lot of information here, so I'm also going to post a PowerPoint and some in-class notes for you to fill out. This covers the majority of the front of house. The best way to learn this material is by doing. So this week it will have a 7.5% assignment. You will be creating, I believe, I don't have it in front of me, but is a bar lounge area 40 feet by 40 feet. The idea is that this area is part of a larger restaurant. So when you think about some restaurants that have like that bar lounge spot, and then they also have their dining room and their kitchen, you don't have to do bathrooms. You don't have to do waiting areas. You don't really have to do anything like that. You're just doing the bar lounge. And I think the seating, I need 50 people being able to seat there comfortably. So it's all about using space efficiently, but also creating a space that people would like to sit in. So I'm going to leave that with you. Have fun this week. Thanks so much for last week. Tuesday or Wednesday, depending on your class, I will be there for our WebEx. I promise. I feel great. And have a great week.